Hello and welcome to the layout. My name's Don and I wanted to take a few minutes to tell you a little bit about our layout, kind of how we got started, why we have a YouTube channel, and what my goals are. My son and I got started in this layout in the fall of 2019, a few months before the COVID shutdown. And at the time, I don't think we really had any idea how important this layout was going to be to us through the pandemic and throughout the stay-at-home orders. This was really our refuge at night to come down here, work for a couple hours, spend time together, take our minds off of work and school and everything else that was going on. From the beginning, we kind of knew that we wanted to model this after modern day. We also wanted to model it pretty much by my choice after the Pennsylvania area, specifically Altoona. I grew up in the Pittsburgh area, and I had many chances to ride Amtrak through the Horseshoe Curve, and I knew about Altoona and its history, and I thought it'd be a perfect place for us to model. I'm sitting in what we call Horseshoe Curve. Our version of Horseshoe Curve is really modeled after like 2018. It no longer has 4 lines, it has 3 lines. It is at grade, just like the real Horseshoe Curve. So from my left to my right, we are actually moving up grade through the Horseshoe Curve and around the mountain and then back down on the other side. Because we're talking 2018, things are modern. We're running modern engines. The other thing I'll tell you about our layout is we run what's sometimes called 3-rail scale. So we're looking at traditional 3-rail. So I can run engines anywhere from the 40s, 50s up through modern equipment. But we have converted much of our modern equipment to scale couplers. We like the way the smaller couplers look. We like the slack action. We like the fact that the engines and cars are closer together. So it feels more realistic. At least it does to us. The other things you'll notice as I give you a tour around our layout is we actually take the time to weather much of our rolling stock and put graffiti on it. We are trying to look for something that feels modern and what you'd see in the real world. I don't want to use the word realistic. I don't think we quite meet that. I would tell you we're looking for believable. You should look at it and look at something and believe what you're seeing. Some people ask us why we are running 3-rail versus 2-rail. 2-rail is more realistic. In my mind, if you're concentrating on counting the rails, I've lost the illusion. I really want to pull you into the scenes, into the vignettes. The trains are part of this. The village, the buildings, the detail is really what I want you to focus on. If you're focusing on and counting the number of rails, I've lost that vision. I've not brought you into the scene the way I'd like. The other thing about our layout is, in many ways, we've put up visual blocks. You can't necessarily see the entire layout from one place. This really helps us when we want the trains to disappear for a while, so you're not constantly watching a train follow itself around a loop. My layout is based on 3 loops. And part of that decision was so that we could run trains down here in the basement and inviting guests and not have to actually monitor and pay attention, so that the trains will continue around the loops by themselves at any time. But if you actually want to operate or play trains or run trains by yourself, it's really easy to have 2 to 3 people actually running trains, throwing the switches, paying attention to where other trains are so that you don't run into each other and meet in the middle of a cornfield somewhere. But it is possible to go all the way down from our lower staging up to the tops of the mountain and all the way back down. And that will to do that, you actually have to cross through the Horseshoe Curve area 3 times. We call the channel Horseshoe Curve Park. What I'm sitting in at some point in time will be modeled after the park. Today we just have Horseshoe Curve. Part of this is so that we can actually reach scenery and get to things. We'll make this section of the layout wider when it's time, and we've made it to that point of our progress. Honestly, that might be a few years. But today, Horseshoe Curve is here. It's operational. I'll give you some detailed video of it later. but you can really see, you know, what we're going for, that it is a nice, you know, 180-degree curve. You can see where at one point in time it had 4 rails. Today it matches the current 3-rail configuration. The other thing that we started from was we built this idea of we were going to build several buildings that we call statement pieces. Our statement piece buildings were going to be scratch built, and by scratch building them, it allowed us to build things that actually truly exist in the Altoona and Junietta area. Now, there are definitely times that we have to work with a little bit of selective compression, but you know, if you've been to that area, if you've been to the Railroaders Museum, if you've been to the Junietta Works, if you've ever been to the Boyer Candy Company, these buildings will look as close as we can to those things. And the goal was, if we had enough buildings that represented the area, we'd help, you know, bring you into that understanding of what we're doing. We have a Sheetz gas station as an example, which is a big local gas station chain in that area of Pennsylvania. So as we continue to work on this, my goal is to eventually scratch build all the buildings. Now today I have buildings from Menards, Woodland Scenics, other places. In some places they're just placeholders. At the current rate, I can build about 2 to 3 buildings a year. And the railroad for me is a winter hobby. So I don't spend time during the summer, it's not regularly, down here in the basement working on the trains. This would be an example of an exception to that. Is tomorrow is the Detroit 3-railers Trainapalooza, and everything down here is nice, cleaned up for the show and the tours we're going to have tomorrow. And I'm really proud to be able to show this off to not just the Detroit 3-railers Club, but our various friends from YouTube. Starting here at the far end of the layout, you can see the descent down into the staging area and the turnaround area for track 1. You can see track 2 and what we refer to as track 3. You can see the starts of some mountains. Eventually there'll be some tunnel portholes here. And this will really, for us, represent the north end of the Gallitzin Tunnel area. Again, not a whole lot of work on this section. This section probably has not gotten nearly as much attention as other parts of the layout, but I thought I'd start here to give you an idea of where we're at. This is what we refer to as the top of the mountain. Here at the apex of this corner is the highest part of the layout. You can kind of already see from the picture of the engine, they're already starting downgrade, even though the rest of the train is back around Horseshoe Curve and still on the upward part of the grade. Here we have a wide angle view of Horseshoe Curve, and you should be able to see the upward and the continuing upward grade that the trains have to climb to get their way through Horseshoe Curve. Horseshoe Curve was built specifically to help trains get around the grade and get over the mountains, and that's the way our Horseshoe Curve was built. As I mentioned earlier, Horseshoe Curve is built with 3 lines of track all the way around the curve. And if you look really closely, kind of in the middle where the individual rails are setting, you'll see the spacing is slightly off. That's where the 4th line would have been back in the heyday of the Pennsylvania Railroad. As we exit Horseshoe Curve, we start to come into an interesting set of switches. This actually allows us to run trains down the hill, back into staging, and then back around Horseshoe Curve. It also allows us to split the trains up so that we can head trains farther down the line towards Junietta. So this is the outskirts of town. This is the start of, the Altoona town itself in our layout. In this area, you can see where the Boyer Candy Company will be placed in the future. For those people that know Boyer Candy Company, they're the makers of Mallow Cups. They also own the rights today for the Clark Candy Bar Company products as well. Just to the right, we have what is our version of the 17th Street Bridge. This is what separates Boyer and the road from where the Pennsylvania Railroaders Memorial Museum is at. And then just to the right, we get to our museum. The Boyer Candy Company and the Railroaders Memorial Museum are 2 of the items that we call statement pieces. These are the buildings that we're really trying to keep a high level of accuracy and realism for our layout. So as an example, this was built to scale. This building from end to end is about 5 feet 2 inches long, which in a no-scale layout is a monstrous building. So as we pull back away from the building, I want to point out that the building isn't just big to be big. It gives you a good indication of how big the building is, but it fits in well with the other pieces of the buildings around it. So the 7-story, 8-story skyscrapers behind it fit well. Down to the right, you'll see the Junietta locomotive works. Again, it looks like it's in scale with this building, which was important to us. I've been working on the Railroaders Museum now for the better part of 6 months. This is definitely a highly detailed building, and I would tell you that maybe I'm a quarter of the way through. There's more brick detail that's going to go into this. Clearly you can see it doesn't have a roof yet. This building includes things like fire escapes, lots of detail on the roof. There's there'll be continuing on the other side. There's platform. So there's a ton of work. This building is actually lit as well. So once it's on the layout, you'll be able to see some light from inside the building. But again, it's been hundreds of hours of work so far. I've enjoyed all of it. It's definitely been challenging trying to figure out how to build all the windows, how to make the windows look realistic, how to come up with glass, how are we going to manage light leakage out of the building. All of this has been trial and error, but I'm really happy with where we're at so far, and I'm looking forward to having it be complete one day. So here we can see the Junietta works. We actually have a Millhouse Rivers turntable. This is actually one of their smaller turntables. I believe it's 28 inches long. So it's not big enough to turn, large steam engines. You can't really turn an Allegheny on this or a big boy. But the reality of it is, those engines were never built at this facility. The Pennsylvania Railroad built, hundreds, if not thousands of K4s, lots of other work here. And today it's a modern diesel facility. And unlike many other layouts, we did not model a roundhouse. One of the pieces I'm particularly proud of was actually drawn up and catted by my son David. And that's the concrete ring here that sits around the turntable. Unlike many turntables that you'll see in no-scale or O-gauge layouts today, it doesn't just have some whisker tracks coming off at very straight angles. You'll notice that all of the track has been flexed into place. You can also see some of the detail here that we've actually pulled the rails out of the ties, and they're actually inlaid into the concrete ring, much the same way they are at Junietta. Again, this gives it a very unique look. I laughed with a few of my friends. There were many people online that told us that this would never work. We couldn't do this. And I am very proud of the level of detail and accuracy that this was built with, and went together very smoothly. So let me tell you a little bit about, this is another one of our, what we call statement piece buildings. This was built with a combination of work on a CNC router, and the brickwork and windows, the doors were all built using a laser cutter. I drew everything up in Lightburn for the laser cutter. Everything that was done on the CNC router was drawn up in Fusion 360. The track layout itself was actually drawn up originally in Scram, and everything was really important that to make this all work the way we wanted, to have all dimensions correct from the beginning, so that the tracks laid where they needed to be, the CNC was going to turn out the way it needed to be, and everything would go together flawlessly. As I mentioned earlier, our turntable was built by Al over at Millhouse Studios. We called Al and asked him very specifically to build us a modern table. This table was rebuilt by the Norfolk Southern Railroad in 2018, at which time the doghouse changed, the tower changed, the entire turntable was modernized. And so we asked him actually to do a custom work for us. We commissioned him to do the custom work so that this would represent a modern day version of the Altoona Junietta turntable, and not the older Pennsylvania Railroad style.
That's it for today's tour. Let's go ahead and run some trains.